importance of cybersecurity is not lessening, it's only increasing. And organizations, I think, feel this sort of unseen pressure to hire folks who can hit the ground running and have tons of experience, because no one wants to hire someone who may not hit the marks on all requirements, right? But it's a field where we have to understand that there's a ramp-up period.
Welcome to another episode of Trust Versus, a podcast powered by HITRUST, a global leader in cybersecurity assurances. I'm Jeremy Huval, Innovation Officer with HITRUST.
And I'm Robert Booker, Strategy Officer at HITRUST. You know, Jeremy, this is kind of a bittersweet day for us because it brings us to the very last episode of Season 2 of the Trust Versus podcast. And I remember we started this last year thinking, there are a couple of things we could talk about. And man, it's been a great journey. We've covered a lot, not only last season, but this season, all things AI. We talked about leadership engagement between the board and cybersecurity leaders. We've talked about building security programs that are both secure, but also anchored on things like innovation and marketing and just so much more. It's been really a great ride.
Yeah, it turned into sort of two overarching themes this season, in my opinion. One was, like you mentioned, this arc of AI conversations where we talked about AI risk management and AI governance and a lot of AI security from the terms of how do I secure an AI system, and also how is AI affecting sort of the toolkit and the security landscape of both blue teams and red teams. So there's sort of two arcs there, the AI piece, and then secondly, the sort of cybersecurity leadership series of conversations we have, which for me has been especially rich in my opinion. We talked to Jason Clark, and today we talked to MK, you'll hear more about in a second. But just, we're so lucky to talk to so many really experienced cybersecurity leaders, tell stories about different aspects of communicating cybersecurity and establishing leadership and clear goals and staffing and whatnot. It's been a really rich season in my opinion.
Yeah, and we kind of end season 2 a little bit where we began. We had an unplanned episode at the very beginning of the season that was hosted by our friend and colleague, Steve Perkins, spending time really talking about the magnitude and the impact of an event that had just a profound impact, talking about an event that just had a profound disruption to the healthcare industry. And today we're again joined by Steve talking about something that, while it's probably not as imminent and we're talking about an active event, it could potentially be even more important. And that is the challenge of how we really look at building this next generation of talent in the cybersecurity industry and enabling people to grow into roles as cybersecurity leaders. Steve had a really powerful interview with our guest today, MK Palmore, who is an industry recognized advisor and cybersecurity leader. He hosts a really cool podcast, the Leadership Student Podcast, and he's a strategic advisor for Google in their cloud office of the CISO. In fact, MK recently hosted a really cool panel that we had at the HITRUST Collaborate conference in the Dallas area, focused on challenges facing talent for the cybersecurity industry. We frankly liked it so much, we asked MK to join us here on Trust Versus, to help us wrap up this season talking about this challenge of leadership. So, Steve, let me reintroduce you to our audience here and ask you to take a moment just to refresh people on your background and what you do, and maybe set the stage for what I thought was a really fun interview.
Hello, everyone. This is Steve Perkins. It's great to be back. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Jeremy. I was with you on the first episode of the season, as you just mentioned, where we talked about that mega breach. And in it, we talked about and touched on this very topic about the need for leaders not only to do the right work, but also to keep their head and have confidence through the disaster and through the emergency. I mean, it's sort of that captain in the storm does need to be at the helm, thinking things through and providing a stable base for everyone to work from. And, that's something that really jumped out to me in this interview is that we've got MK here who's really dedicated his latter life to this whole discussion. How do we as leaders lead our teams? And that's really transcendent. That's transcendent of cybersecurity and risk management and compliance. That's transcendent to anyone listening to this or all of us. For me, it was kind of a good reminder, even in my own career, to just say, hey, you need to stop and think about your people and how you're developing them and how you're growing them and how you're providing that stable base for them? And where are you going to find the next level of talent? We all know there's a talent gap in this industry, and trying to fill it and is a paramount challenge that we can't forget, and it takes work. And that was the other thing that jumped out at me is that some really thoughtful ideas about where do you go to find that talent, right? And if we keep, I think we touched on the analogy, if we keep fishing in the same pond, we're going to run out of fish. So we need to start looking broader in more creative ways. And in doing that, we can actually have other benefits like helping society and helping other people groups and underprivileged groups actually get a leg up. MK, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's get this started by having you share just a little bit about who you are and what you're working on right now.
I'm a senior cybersecurity advisor at Google Cloud. Been at Google Cloud for about 3.5 years now. And what I do is I'm part of the leadership of a team called the Office of the CISO. And we're a team that's comprised of all senior cybersecurity executives that come from a variety of business verticals. My personal background is largely in the public sector space, and I lead a team that's responsible for a global effort in that regard. And what we do is we help CIOs and CISOs with their digital transformation efforts with a particular focus on cybersecurity. My passion on the side is getting people into the cybersecurity industry. How that manifests itself is really around the work that I do with an organization called Cybersecurity, where I serve as the president and a member of the board of directors. Cybersecurity is an organization that's been around for a decade plus now, founded by a handful of senior cybersecurity practitioners in the industry who at the time recognized that there was not enough of a presence of women and people of color in the technology space and cybersecurity space. And so they started the organization really just as an effort to help people get into this dynamic and burgeoning industry. And we've been at it now for a decade, and I took over the role as president about 2 years ago and have been leading the organization. We're US-based, and we've had aims on becoming an international organization, but largely US-based with roughly 12 chapters, which represent the physical element of the organization. But our goal is to impact the industry worldwide in this effort to bring more women, people of color, and in our interest here, also the veteran population transitioning from their service in the U.S. Armed Services, bring them into the industry as well. So the organization has been particularly focused on women and people of color, people from underserved communities. I, as a part of my remit when I took over the presidency, advocated for and nominated that we should also pursue the veteran population. I'm a veteran myself, having served in the United States Marine Corps, and veterans issues and veteran transition capabilities from their service into industry is another area of passion for me. I try and help as many veterans as I personally can. And I think that this vehicle, this nonprofit, paying particular interest to women and folks from underserved communities, I thought it was a good add to bring in the veteran population as well. What's interesting to me is that the founders, the folks who founded the organization, the vast majority of them were veterans as well. So it was kind of something that we should have been doing for the duration of the organization, but I was the one who sort of helped bring it to light as an additional add of a population base that we absolutely wanted to assist.
Yeah, well, it's a natural idea, and I think we're jumping right into it. But I was involved with a very large systems integrator, cybersecurity consultancy 10, 15 years ago, and we were talking about the emergence of the shortage of talent and that we had to start looking beyond the same pools of fish, right? There wasn't enough talent to start with. As soon as you trained them up, they got alert fatigue. You'd promote some of them, then they'd get bought up by a vendor, and there you go. And that we had to start thinking broader. And at the same time, I think that the idea of bringing in and how do we reach different people groups and bring them into STEM and bring them in out of STEM and into cyber was really starting to be at the forefront. So this has been discussed for a long time. Is it working? I mean, is this focus starting to have traction, and what is working?
And that's a fair question, Steve. I will tell you that the data does not give you the warm and fuzzies about whether or not it's working. It's an effort that requires intentionality and diligence, both by industry and the folks who are helping to support the efforts to bring women and folks from underserved communities into this space. I think we trip ourselves up as an industry, quite frankly. I mean, we've all heard the stories of the challenges of how we put out job descriptions in the industry, how we kind of set ourselves up for failure by expecting unicorns to be hired by these organizations that desperately need cybersecurity talent. And what it's resulted in is that, the folks who are lucky enough to have been trained and have some decent experience find themselves fully employed, typically, good economic times, rotate from one organization to the next just based upon their ability to matriculate and their career desires. But the truth of the matter is that as an industry, because the identified gap is so massive, it will take quite a bit in the way of Herculean efforts, I think, to close that gap. And you've seen now, within the past 2 or 3 years, some significant interest from the government side of the house. The U.S. federal government's initiated multiple programs to support bringing folks into the industry, and they have a few things underway. And I'm a big believer, because I come from the public sector, that there are some problems that really government has to participate in order to solve, and this is one of them. And I think where the shortcomings are is that the industry is not as intentional as it possibly can be about this challenge. And I think that for as much as what's being done, there are organizations out there, and I want to be clear, who are supporting this, making attempts, supporting nonprofits in the space, doing everything that they can. I work for one of the biggest technology providers on the planet, and every year we come out with plans to help support the industry in the way of providing access to training, in the way of certificates in the cybersecurity space, artificial intelligence, all of those, all the new dynamic training that can be made available. And so getting folks training, believe it or not, is not the challenge. So to your question about what is working, getting people trained is not the challenge. The real challenge today, moving forward, is what do you do with those folks who who've shown you that they have the academic capability to pursue the work, but they don't have the practical hands-on experience? And so what we need from the industry, from government, and from everyone to respond with is more opportunities for new folks into the field to get hands-on experience. And that means probably an explosion of internship opportunities, externship opportunities, anything where folks can get hands-on experience and have practical experience to apply the academic formulations and structures that they learn in the classroom environment. And if you can combine those two things, you have someone who's really capable of probably landing a permanent role in a cybersecurity organization or apparatus. But that middle piece of hands-on training is the piece that's not working at the moment, and that's where we find the most difficulty. Cybersecurity is concentrated over the years on getting folks training, regardless of what level you happen to be at. And our current focus is around helping folks at every stage of their cybersecurity career. We're trying to be much more responsive to not just the front end, but people mid-career and seniors in the industry, like myself. So getting people in the door, training them up, ISC2, the SANS organization, others in the space that provide really top-notch quality training, but it's not enough, because the importance of cybersecurity is not lessening, it's only increasing. And organizations, I think, feel this sort of unseen pressure to hire folks who can hit the ground running and have tons of experience, because no one wants to hire someone who's going to, who may not hit the marks on all requirements, right? But it's a field where we have to understand that there's a ramp-up period. We have to invest in training of active onboard employees. First of all, the field's so dynamic, you have to do that anyway. And we have to learn to make time for upskilling. That's something I think industry-wide that we're not very good at. We leave it up to the individual. If you want to go and upskill yourself, pursue additional certifications, learn new training, you do that on your own time, because, I've got this screen that I need your eyes on, and I need you moving alerts from one section of the screen to the next so that we can figure out whether or not we're in danger. But we've got a lot of work to do, I think, as an industry. We're doing some things right, but the relative importance of the job, because it's increasing, because there's so much focus on cybersecurity, means that we need to be taking a much more holistic approach to make sure that we're green and not red 3 and 5 years from now as the challenge from the adversary continues to change.
I think that's great. The need is obvious. I've worked for many different organizations in my career, and very often I've wanted to bring on interns into different roles and functions. Just let's say cybersecurity side. For a lot of organizations that don't have the time at the pace of work that we have today to stop and even invent an internship program, to think about what does that job description look like? How do I even go and find the intern? Once they come on board, what should I task them with? What's reasonable given their levels of training?
We have, as an organization, Cybersecurity, formed partnerships. We have a recent partnership that we formed with an organization called Intern XL that does a good majority of what you just described. They form the relationships with the corporate sponsors. They help the corporate sponsors identify the need, and they source the candidates and provide candidates for the viable openings. And this partnership is something that we're excited about at Cybersecurity because our members desperately need it. Now, the challenge is they don't concentrate solely on cybersecurity. I think they're kind of across the board. You still have to have internally in the corporations for which the interns are going to be employed. There's got to be someone there on the other end to receive them, march them through the process, act as cohort leaders, actually assign the work, get into the practical day-to-day. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. I think you kind of nailed it, right? Because you've identified that as you recognize there's a ton of engagement required there. You're absolutely right. Not every organization sort of built to bring in these internship programs or develop ones on their own. But I would advocate that as an industry, we should be, as organizations, thinking long-term about not only the impact on the industry, but building and fielding better candidates in the field, and hands-on experience is what's going to get them. That's what's going to get them over the hump. So yes, it's hard, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. In theory, it's also really good leadership style to actually even task your teams with training and mentoring other people as part of their developmental careers. Again, it's just hard in today's world where we're always behind, we're always chasing the next number, and nobody has the luxury of spare time to sit down and say, let me just invent a new program. Let alone we all generally know that we're not doing enough to grow our own teams. Maybe there's some idea there that those can join, that part of good leadership, you could kill two birds with one stone, help develop your team through helping them mentor other people coming into the industry.
And again, you're touching on really a huge part of the challenge, which is internally in the corporations. How do you, one, agree that it needs to be done, and secondly, take the time out of the day-to-day grind to support an effort like this? Because someone's got to take it on as a project. You're probably not likely going to hire an individual just to do that, and which means that someone's going to be dual-hatted or multi-hatted, so to speak. And it's an increasing responsibility. But again, I know it's hard, but at the same time, we need to do it for ourselves as an industry.
Well, I think what I really respect about your work and the pods and your speaking that I've heard and what I've seen you write is that you kind of approach it from a far more balanced view, which is, it's kind of like, if I may, it's like a three-legged stool. It's yes, this is something that you should do because you need more talent. Mm-hmm. Yes, though, this is also something that you should do to properly advance society, to have proper representation of other people groups into your business for diversity reasons. And third, there is a part here, which is many of these people groups are part of disadvantaged or other groups that need a leg up and an opportunity to change their trajectories, right?
I had the benefit of a very sort of a linear and well-balanced career. I came up through the U.S. public sector. I was a special agent in the FBI for 22 years. One of the reasons I applied to the FBI was because of the variety of things that they were responsible for investigating. And I knew that if there was any one particular thing that I either chose, lost interest in, gained interest in, that I'd have an ability to pivot my career with the Bureau. And I did just that. I did things that I was interested in, things that I enjoyed. And when the opportunity came for me to pivot into a career in cybersecurity, I jumped at it. And the Bureau as an organization supported that transition by providing me all of the necessary training that I might need in order to get up to speed, be able to contribute, that there's a clear ROI on their investment in me as an individual. And then I had an opportunity in terms of practical application to lead at the highest level in the organization and be able to have the visibility into the types of investigations and cases that we're working. And I packaged that as experience and was able to turn that into opportunities post-government service in the private sector. And so I say all of that to, one, I'm a big believer in the fact that this stuff can be taught. If you are willing to learn, you've got in the military, we used to call it the G2. If you got the intelligence, you got the aptitude, and you're willing to put in the work, you can learn this stuff. And when you learn it and get practical experience, you're applying it, you become a force in this industry. Practical experience plus, academic learning, you combine those two things and you keep that eye towards being, I call it the eternal student, understanding that this industry is so dynamic that you're constantly going to have to be learning. You keep your mindset like that, and you will have a job in cybersecurity for a long time to come. And then when it comes to the folks from underserved communities who kind of need a leg up or an opportunity, I should say. I don't even like using the term leg up. They need an opportunity to show what they're capable of. Yeah, this is a fantastic and dynamic field to be in. The globe is diverse. Cybersecurity solutions are built for, the common citizen so that they can benefit from use of all of this great technology that's being developed. Why shouldn't we have a more diverse workforce to help develop and apply these solutions that are going to help protect people? Because it's meant for everybody. The technology that's being created is meant to help solve problems globally around the world. And so that population base of underserved folks and people who come from diverse backgrounds, they should be participants in this growing and dynamic field. And it's cool and great work. It's great work to be engaged in.
So there's the one part of this, which is how do we get organizations, enterprises, to say, let's bring more diversity in. Let's just develop the next generation. In attracting the next generation of worker to come here, do we have any kind of a marketing or PR problem?
I absolutely think there's room to grow there. I don't think that as an industry, we do a fair job of explaining to folks that this is an option for you. Providing you've got those characteristics that we've talked about a couple of times now. You've got the aptitude, you've got the interest in the field, you like solving problems. Maybe there's a component of a desire to serve, higher purpose. Make sure that the job that you have, even if you choose to do your entire career in corporate America, the job that you have is really impactful to business outcomes. There's probably a handful of positions in corporate America right now that sort of meet all of those wickets and requirements, and cybersecurity happens to be one of them. So it answers the mail in lots of different areas, and I don't think we do a good job in terms of how we present it as an option, especially for folks at the high school level, even in college. Most folks go into college. I've got 2 kids in college at the moment, thinking about career tracks, planning out their lives, and I think that unfortunately, what's presented about cybersecurity typically is hey, if you're in STEM, this is something that is available to you. If you're a comp sci major, this is absolutely what you want to ultimately do. And I think we need to broaden the lens quite a bit to attract more folks with the skills and capabilities to thrive in the industry. And that means we need to look outside of the traditional pathways to encourage folks to have and take a hard look at this industry as a possible landing point for them in terms of their careers. They will not be disappointed. They may not stay in cybersecurity their entire careers. They may matriculate into business owners, business leaders. The knowledge they gain as cybersecurity professionals will always be relevant to them because of the increasing importance and role that technology plays in business operations and business outcomes. And so, we need to do a better job at identifying it as a feasible pathway for people to be interested in.
Over time, I've transitioned. I happen to run marketing functions for the last handful of years of my last couple job stints. But I even look at it as a marketing person with cybersecurity knowledge, true knowledge, actually makes more than a person who doesn't. I mean, the cybersecurity, if you look at rank and file marketing positions, they make more money if they have cybersecurity knowledge, because this is a very interesting industry, like some other technology industries. Having domain expertise actually matters. It starts with the practitioners, and we need more analysts and we need more engineers in security. But the whole ecosystem has to propel forward too, which is customer support people. So if you have a propensity to maybe not you're a STEM engineering type hands-on keyboard person, still learning what is networking, what is computing, what is securing that look like, to be able to sell it, to be able to support it, to be able to market it, to be able to finance it. I think it's an even larger proposition of attracting and communicating the potential opportunity to the next generation.
No, completely agree. And in fact, one of the things that I'm doing also in my spare time is thinking about how to build out training and curriculum at the graduate and undergraduate level to basically reemphasize the importance of what you just described as sort of that foundational understanding of technology and how it applies in nearly every aspect of business. It will make you a better business leader to understand the technology components. And as you just described your own career path, coming from a technical background, I'm sure you feel you're better at marketing in the technology space because you understand the tech. And I think that applies not just in the technology space, but again, because of the importance of technology. Every business is a technology business or has a technology component today, especially ones that are global operations. And this will continue to play a role in the outcomes of those organizations, which is why you're seeing now this emphasis on folks with technology backgrounds sitting in the board of directors. You know, the expectation that folks in the C-suite get much more exposure to the technology components and how to protect it. I'm still, waiting for and hoping that we'll see someday the elevation of the Chief Information Security Officer to the full-fledged C-suite role that I think it deserves, rather than being caked in under some other individual within the C-suite. They should be full members because what they do and what they're responsible for is so prejudicial to business outcomes that it deserves access to the decision-making apparatus. And I think we're seeing, slow changes in that regard, but I think ultimately where it will evolve is that you'll see folks with enterprise risk knowledge capabilities, technology capabilities, chief information security officer, like all kind of combined into that enterprise risk realm, sitting at the adult table, so to speak.
I heard somebody recently say that we'll know when we'll really arrive when there's actually a cybersecurity committee on the board. Like there's an audit committee. You probably need to have a cybersecurity assurance committee because it's just as important for business prosperity and future survival as proper financial hygiene, for example, right?
No, it's definitely evolving, and I think we'll continue to see changes in the business organization environment to include the boards of directors.
Switching gears up a little bit, you're also the host of the Leadership Student Podcast.
I am.
What's that about? And why do you do that? What's that all about? And why is it important to you?
Yeah, the Leadership Student is a passion project of mine. I'm in a bit of a hiatus right now. I went through a series of bringing folks in for interviews. Leadership's a passion topic. It was a subject that was introduced to me at a very, very young age. I have always viewed myself as a learner in the leadership realm, even though I have very, very deep practical leadership experience. My experience teaches me that the more I experience, the more I understand there's still more I need to learn. And the name was intentionally chosen to create the effect that I don't care how much experience you've got, there's still something else to be learned. And the goal of the podcast really was just around getting folks with deep leadership experience to talk about those experiences, because I think even talking about it and listening to stories about leadership help people become better leaders, because you get an opportunity to hear how others have navigated really challenging situations And hopefully you pick up some nuggets and you're actually able to apply some of that in your own personal leadership trajectory. So leadership is really if I'd say, the banner issue that I feel that I wear as sort of my chest plate professionally. It's the topic I think that's interwoven into everything that I do. And so the leadership student is a component of that, and how I feel I can help folks by providing an opportunity for them to hear from balanced, really talented leaders so that you can pick up that information and, again, use it in your own practical experience.
I've heard you talk about your concept, zone leadership. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's something I'm developing. I feel like, and I think, over the years as an industry, the leadership industry has come to understand that there are components that are really, really important for individuals to understand. First of all, the centerpiece for me as leaders is a self-understanding. The more you know about yourself, the better leader you can become. And I find my experience has been that blind spots for leaders, if you don't have like a 360-degree understanding of how you show up as a leader, and it doesn't mean you're going to be perfect, but even having an awareness of the blind spots, of the areas where you could probably improve, it makes you cognizant of them, and it changes how it is from a dynamic standpoint, how you enter the room, how you deal with people, how you get things done, and how you get things accomplished. I'm not fully baked as a leader. I still have areas that I think I need to work on. And so the idea of zone leadership is the concept that there are so many factors impacting how you show up as an individual day to day, that it's a fluctuating thing. And at any one point in time, you're in a particular zone. That means you're going to show up in a different way, depending on which zone it is that you're in. And I include things in that, like what's happening in your personal life. What are the individual experiences that you're having with close family members? What interactions have you had in the workplace from a time standpoint that lead you to reflect those experiences in the way that you do? And are you comfortable and safe in your own skin to show up and advocate for yourself in ways that you need to advocate? So I'm still working on it conceptually, but there's a lot involved there. But I just think of this fluidity associated with how you show up, how you engage, and what your expectations should be in terms of what people's responses to that will be, because it's a constantly moving target.
So we talked about that organizations, one of the first things they can do is just make a commitment to, we're going to hire and develop and work on developing the next generation. It's not just looking for somebody coming off the shelf. Reach into other pools that we haven't normally gone to. Reach into women groups, into ethnic groups, et cetera. Reach into the inner city, figure it out, right? And reach further. Maybe there's further, which is, hey, work with some universities to communicate all the opportunities. So you can create in your local city where your headquarters is. How do you reach out to those universities to do a little bit of public relations into why cyber is a great career path? Become part of your community. So those are great things. What about for the individual? How can the individual who's passionate about these subjects do something?
Nonprofits are really the answer to that, or at least a component. How I've decided to try and have impact in the industry was to fully involve myself in the activities of Cybersecurity. There are other nonprofits out there in the same space, Women in Cybersecurity, RAISIS, lots of organizations geared towards specific demographic groups, and we all work together as best we can. It's a little bit of a challenge sometimes as nonprofits. We're all kind of scrapping for the same dollars to help support our mission states. The ability to sustain yourself varies from one place to the next, but nonprofits is a good place to volunteer your time, especially for folks who are already in the industry and thriving and figuring out how to navigate these wonderful careers in cyber and technology. Take some time out and support organizations where they're trying to gear folks up. One of the best things you can do for someone trying to break into this industry is put them in front of someone who's already in the industry and willing to spend time helping them understand what it's going to take to navigate it. One of the questions that I would impose and both get from people when they reach out to me and they're just like, where do I start? Part of it is in starting with the basics and fundamentals, doing that making sure this is an area where you want to spend your time and invest your academic prowess and efforts to learn the material, and then build off of that. Some organizations out there, like the SANS organization, do an absolute fine job at sort of mapping out career paths in the technology space. They literally have a slick sheet at SANS where they tell, if you're into DFIR, digital forensics incident response, here's the path you should take. And it all starts with those basic fundamental courses. Because the field is so wide and so deep, there's different areas to go into. So it helps with that, to have that kind of identification. But putting folks out there who can communicate and explain to people how they got their start, what pathways they took, the things they did, the things they chose not to do, can be really helpful for people. So, one of the things that I think is a requirement of leadership is to give back. And I try and message that with my colleagues all the time. It's not enough just to concentrate on your own personal career. Spend some time helping someone else develop their careers. The other way that I think works, and that I've seen now in 2 corporate settings that I think people get a tremendous amount of return on investment on, are employee resource groups. I think employees enjoy the opportunity to express themselves and be around like-minded individuals in a collective effort. And I've seen these ERGs now champion certain efforts internally in the corporations, and they have an ability, because they're given, this sort of wide remit from the corporate structure, to support their activities, and sometimes they're given finances. That's another way to contribute from an industry perspective, because I've seen ERGs champion external organizations. They bring in speakers, that kind of thing, and they champion efforts like the internship thing that we were talking about. It's probably an ERG or someone that belongs to a corporate ERG who's going to champion something like that and then actually bring it to fruition, bring something like that across the finish line. So those 2 things, volunteering external to the organizations that you work for, and then finding ways to quote unquote volunteer internally in the organizations that you're working for, are 2 good ways to dive in. Hey, there's one other point I think I want to be clear in making here too. The folks, especially from a diversity perspective, the folks who are needed to help with this are not just the folks from the diverse communities. Allyship is so important in this endeavor. I keep, my own personal mentors, I call them a board of advisors, are not all people that look like me. I turn to and seek counsel from and guidance from women, people of color. It doesn't matter. You have to, one, be able to develop a relationship of trust with those people. There are folks who have experiences that, from a relational standpoint, will help you to understand what kind of career you need to be navigating. So it's not always 100% necessary that the folks that you turn to for mentorship and guidance don't necessarily need to look exactly like you. And I just want to make sure that, as I was talking about volunteering and folks giving their time to this issue, it's not just the folks from the underserved and minority communities that should be contributing here. Everyone. This is, I call it all hands on deck effort. So if you got the mission mindset, and you want to help people, this is a great way to do it.
Couldn't agree more. The work you're doing is really important. Thank you for doing it. Thanks for being here.
Outstanding. Thanks for having me on.
Great interview, Steve.
I was listening to it, Steve, and I was thinking about the conversations we had with Omar Khawaja and Mike Conley, also talking about leadership and how not only the opportunity to create space for learning and investing in our team to equip them, but also creating a safe space or environment that allows people to make mistakes, to share ideas, to learn from others. All that just seems to be a common theme that we're hearing through all of this.
I think the big walk away is it's really about fundamental leadership, right? And leadership's about guiding and building and growing your people. How do you attract, recruit, and retain and grow a team that actually performs and gels together and achieves more than it could individually? It's the fundamentals.
And one thing I really heard loud and clear in the interview, and I just want to foot stomp, is the fact that some of your best leaders of the future may not be people that would be traditionally seen as stepping into the roles that they occupy. And I think High Trust is made up of people that have come into this journey. I mean, Jeremy, you're our Chief Innovation Officer. You came at this from being an assessor. And a quite good assessor, but you bringing that life experience forward and helping us innovate for the future is really, really powerful. So I think we could all remember to not be so focused on trying to find the perfect peg for the perfect hole, but to say, maybe I can find somebody that's close and I can help them grow as a leader. It's really, really fascinating. With that, I'm sad to say we're at the end of season 2. So I want to thank all of you for joining us and listening with us. It's been such a pleasure to bring everybody together here and to hear from such great guests and talk about some really interesting and fascinating topics. And my thanks again to Jeremy for being my partner in this, and Steve for joining us along this journey as well. Please stay tuned with what we're doing on the AI front, continuous assurance in the future, and really where we're taking things. We hope to have a lot of capabilities to help all of you achieve the important work that you're working on around cybersecurity and compliance and risk management, all those important topics.
We hope to be back soon. If you'd like to hear more, be sure to subscribe. We may drop surprise future episodes. We very likely will do a season 3, but really it's up to you. Please let us know if this is interesting and value add. And do not be afraid to reach out, if not directly, at least a review on your favorite podcast platform, like Apple Podcast. We'd love to hear feedback. And we'd also love to hear your content ideas for future episodes. So please, please, please engage. We'd be happy to chat with you. And thanks so much to you for listening and participating in this season. It's been a blast, and hopefully we'll talk soon.